All right, today we're going to talk about if fearful avoidants can ever regret a breakup. So let's just get this out of the way. The fearful avoidant will typically go through a period of euphoria after a breakup due to their newfound freedom from the confines of the relationship. However, that doesn't mean they won't eventually regret the breakup. In our experience, it's only after a period of nostalgia due to the time that those regrets began to finally creep in. And really today, we're going to be looking at fearful avoidance from a regret standpoint. So essentially, one of the big issues I'm noticing a lot of people have, just in general, when dealing with any type of an avoidant, just any avoidant in general, nonetheless, fearful avoidance, is they really don't understand how to decode their behaviors. The avoidant will react or think certain things, and if you are coming at this without the proper knowledge of their framework or their mental psychology, it can be a little confusing when trying to understand when they could potentially be regretting a breakup. So I guess the first big insight that I want to leave you with here is the fact that avoidants prefer to be in this constant state of rejection. Now, it's a little bit of a paradox because really, they want love, but at the same time, they don't want to let anyone too close to give them that love because they're afraid of getting hurt. And so their way of coping with this is to constantly have one foot in and one foot out. Now, tell me if any of this sounds familiar. Have you ever had an ex literally say, well, I'm not ready to commit right now, or they're refusing to talk to you about deep personal thoughts, or they let one tiny imperfection ruin the entire relationship? They sometimes will flirt with others as a way of sabotaging the relationship, or they'll refuse to say, I love you. Each one of these is a way of layering in mixed signals so that they can kind of confuse you so that you don't invest a lot and therefore they can keep you a little bit distant while at the same time getting some of the love that they crave. Again, it's a bit of a paradox. They want love, but they don't want to let you close enough to receive that love. And so oftentimes this is an important concept for you to understand when looking at how they regret. So what you'll often find is a fearful avoidant will pay attention to the future and really disregard what's happening in the present and the past. Now, this completely tracks with what we learned about avoidance and nostalgia. We've learned from interviewing hundreds of different people that really someone with an avoidant attachment style really isn't going to have regret or nostalgia about you until they literally think there's no chance of getting you back. And if you really look at it in those terms, it can make sense for why they're keeping you or pushing you away. They're not going to have any kind of regret or nostalgia until they are sure there's no chance of you ever coming back. Oftentimes, this only occurs if they've moved on to someone else, if you've moved on to someone else, or enough time has gone by where neither of you have talked to each other. Only then do they feel comfortable enough to sort of deal with the past. But if they think about the past too often, it can kind of freak them out because doing so is sort of required to deal with very complicated emotions that they aren't really equipped to deal with. And so they often push things back. Now, I think one of the reasons that we stand out is our ability to help our clients highlight points that will create nostalgia and then future pace those points. Okay, so this is a little bit of a complicated judo mix-up thing, but let's imagine that I dated you and I am a fearful avoidant. We break up, and I decide I'm going to move on to someone else. And I'm using this person just not to think about you. So again, future-based. And this person's not really doing it for me. And you have moved on to someone else. And now I give myself permission to think back on our relationship. Well, the peak end rule teaches us that really when we look at an experience, we don't remember the experience for the holistic experience that it is. We remember it on two distinct points. The peak points, which can be the very big positive or negative points, and really what happened at the end. Well, it just so happens when I want to remember our experience, I want to try to base the positive memories that I'm having of the experience I had with you and think of it in a future paced terms. Real quick, I want to say that if you're new to this YouTube channel or you're trying to figure out what you should be doing to get your ex back and you're trying to learn if you even have a chance in your specific circumstance, probably the smartest thing for you to do is actually stop by our website, www.exboyfriendrecovery.com, or take our X Recovery Chances quiz that can be found at exboyfriendrecovery.com. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, taking that free quiz is super easy to do. All you have to simply do is look in the description link below this YouTube video and click on the link you see there. It will take you directly to the quiz where you can fill it out and get an easy answer on what you should be doing going forward and overall what your chances look like in your specific situation. All right, so let's get you back to the video. Let's just imagine you and I took a trip to Hawaii. It was great. Great, Hawaii's awesome. So I'm sitting here with this new person thinking back on our relationship that we had, and literally I don't like to think of it in the past, but what I will do is I'll transition that positive memory that we had and think, you know what, I would really love to go back to Hawaii and feel this way with someone again. The fearful avoidant is constantly setting up this perfect person that they're always having to reach towards. Now, the irony is if you set up this impossible goal, this ungettable sort of approach to a person, you never really try to get that because no one is truly ungettable all the way. It's sort of a North Star to go towards, but ultimately it's a little bit more complicated than that. So really what you need to do when you are dealing with an ex and you're wondering when are they going to regret the breakup, it's really dependent on a couple of factors. We know there is a period of time where they will begin to feel some nostalgic feelings. When they feel those nostalgic feelings, as long as you're reaching out in the correct possible way, they can begin to regret their decision. And they're not going to ever look at it, I don't think, as, I regret breaking up with you. Their ego really can't handle that. Instead, they're going to look at it like, oh, you know what, I might have made a mistake. I think in the future, I'll be happier with this person. They're always thinking of the future because it's a little too difficult to deal with the past and the present problems. So they're always on to the next thing. What can you do for me next? What can you do for me next? What can you do for me next? That is the fearful avoidance jam. Now, the mistake most people run into when they deal with the fearful avoidant is they let their anxious tendencies sort of do the talking for them. What happens when you do let anxious tendencies kind of overtake you? Well, what does this really look like? Well, someone who has an anxious attachment style is oftentimes a person who's going to deal with a breakup in the following way. So after a breakup, an anxious person will usually blow their ex's phone up trying to get back in touch with them. They'll contact them wanting to quote unquote fix things. They'll show up at their work. They'll try to buy them gifts. They'll leave a note on their doorstep or on the windshield of their car. They'll try to get friends to reach out for them. You get kind of the idea here. The problem is this anxious behavior further reiterates why the avoidant is really not wanting to be in a relationship with you. The fearful avoidant will always look at a relationship with you as sort of like a prison in a weird way. And just an analogy, this is not how it always has to be. There is a way to fix this, but just trying to double speak here for them. Imagine that they're looking at a relationship with you as a prison, and you are the guard trying to get them back into their prison cell, and they have just run away. So every time you engage in anxious behavior, you remind them of the prison that potentially awaits them if they get back with you. So what we're finding is by engaging in these really anxious behaviors, you're actually pushing them further and further away. So the way to get around that is to do the exact opposite thing. We're finding consistently among our success stories, people who move on, who literally get to this place emotionally where they're just like, I don't care if I get my ex back anymore, all of a sudden is extremely attractive to their ex. Why? Well, because we're finding a lot of the exes that our clients are trying to get back or get over tend to be avoidant by nature. And this is the kind of language that they want. They can only begin to reminisce about you if they don't feel threatened from you. And once they begin to reminisce about you, that is potentially the period of time where regret can fall into it. So let's do a quick recap here. We know initially when a fearful avoidant goes through a breakup, there's a period of euphoria. They have busted out of jail and they are running. And they know if you run after them, they just need to keep running. But if you make them think they've gotten away, this is a completely crazy analogy, but I think it's working here. If you make them think that they've gotten away, they can kind of drop their guard and you can kind of slowly approach and make them feel regret about your relationship. But here is the little tiny thing that we're noticing happens. In order for this to work, you literally authentically have to get over them, right? And usually people who've gotten over their exes no longer want their exes back, which of course to an avoidant is extremely attractive because they want the ungettable person. They want this unobtainable person that has respect for themselves. And so really everything that we try to do on this YouTube channel is trying to get you over your ex so that you can have options. We don't care if you get your ex back. We don't care if you want to move on from them. We just want you to have the option to choose one or the other.